Cloud. Christine, is it just me or did it stop doing the like, this meeting is being recorded shit?
Yeah, I did notice that.
It's very disconcerting. I don't like it. All right, so hey everyone. Welcome to, wait for it. This is not college, and it's not. And we're going to talk about all the ways in which this is not college. And we're going to talk about some coding school stuff. We're going to talk about some education stuff. And we're going to talk about some personal growth and interaction stuff. The three big topics we're going to be talking about over the next 3 hours. Some of this stuff, like I just want to make sure that you have the right mindset going into the program. But we'll also have some activities and we'll take a few breaks and lots of room for questions also. So to start with, hey everyone, I am Kyle Coberly, Killer Kyle. I'm an educator, a business dork, and a software engineer. I have been teaching for 19 years. I have spent 5 years now in the code school business. Been here for 1.5 years, and I ran a school called Galvanize for about 3 years before that. I also have taught music as a music teacher for a long time. I did everything from 7th grade band to like private like music school instruction kind of stuff. I also have taught rowing and canoeing, sharpshooting, ballroom dance, all kinds of different stuff. And I mentioned this in Two Truths and a Lie, but I was in the music industry for a long time. I was primarily an audio engineer and a marketer, but I also performed and did all kinds of other stuff as well. If you've ever been to the Guitar Center down on County Line, I was an assistant manager there for a few years. And then I worked for a marketing firm that mostly pro audio brands, so microphones, speakers, cables, that kind of stuff. And so I repped those brands in the Rocky Mountains and helped with product development and some of that kind of stuff. Education-wise, I have a master's in engineering manglement from University of Colorado. I went to school for information systems before that at Metro. Fun fact about me, I wrote the Metro State fight song. Before that, I got a degree in audio engineering, and before that, I got a degree in political science. So I have wasted an awful fucking lot of time in college, and can't say I recommend it. So that's like, oh, and like on the personal side, I've lived in Denver now for 13 years. Married. I got 2 kids, got an 8-year-old and a 4.5-year-old. And yeah, I've had something like 700 students, I think. We're kind of getting in that ballpark for code school students. And that's a little bit about me. Ask me some questions.
Where do you, since you taught so many students, where do you think most students get like hung up in the process of learning to code?
Easy answer. It's reimagining yourself as a software developer. Like learning to program is easy. Like the information is all out there. It's free. Go to the library, get a book. I can save you 15 grand right now. If all you want to learn how to do is program computers. But that's not the hard thing about this. The hard thing is becoming a software developer. And it's the difference between learning Spanish and becoming Spanish. And so that means letting go of a lot of your self-conceptions about who you are and opening yourself up to becoming this new thing. And that's a very like psychologically dangerous thing to do. It requires a lot of trust and it's hard fucking work. And so most people fall down there. It's not the like, I couldn't figure out loops or something like that. Everybody gets that part. it's the identity part of it that I think is the biggest challenge. Good question. What else?
Not like a coding question, but like I guess a more personal question.
Yeah.
What's your favorite instrument to play?
Oh, awesome. I'm mostly a guitarist. I was more of a multi-instrumentalist in the past. But I've also like played lots of drums and guitar, bass, piano, drums, like what I taught as a music teacher. But I've been more and more settling down as like, yeah, I just play guitar. As far as like guitars that I have, I've also like narrowed that down substantially. My acoustic is a Tim Armstrong Hellcat. I also have an Epiphone Sheraton. That's like my jazz guitar. And then for my rock and roll guitar, I play an ESP Eclipse.
That's cool. My husband's trying to learn. He's trying to self-teach himself guitar because he follows a lot of. Have you heard of the genre neo soul?
Mm-hmm.
He's trying to do that.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, I've had a lot of music education, but almost all the stuff that I actually use, and especially all like my guitar stuff, like I'm self-taught, and nice. So can be done. Cool. What else?
What is your recommendation for, students when you're balancing your personal life with family and, your school life and how to navigate that, the right way, I guess?
You are asking the absolute right question, and we're going to talk about it in this very lesson. That's not really a lesson. We'll talk about this in the next 3 hours sometime. That will absolutely be addressed. And if I don't get to some corner of it that is relevant to you, by all means, stop me. What else?
What are your favorite and least favorite things about software engineering?
Ooh, favorite things is, so like when I was in music, I was like, I'm a creative. And I was like, I can't work some cubicle job, man. You can't constrain me. And like, that is like the number one lie I think musicians tell themselves to like just keep themselves just miserable and impoverished. Because I ended up doing a lot more boring, soul-sucking work as a musician. Like just recording shitty dad rock bands and stuff like that than like I've actually really done in software. Software is intensely creative. Like as a musician, I can create basically one kind of thing. I don't have such constraints as a software engineer. I can make basically anything that I can imagine. And so I found it to be a very fulfilling, intensely creative field, probably the most creative field, because you can do just about anything. And least favorite thing I like about software, like this gets better every year, but I think there's like a certain archetype that was attracted to software engineering for the last like half century or so. And like those people, especially in the concentrations that they exist in tech, are like, maybe not so awesome to work with. And they don't, in part that's because I don't think that they do a good enough job of embracing how like human and creative this work is. They don't want it to be that. They want to be the computer. They want to be told what to do and then just translate that for the computer. And that's not valuable work. And those aren't great people to work with. And so in part because of code schools and just changing demographics and a lot of new opportunities, I think we're seeing a lot of that change. But it's a slow, gradual process. So, but that is a frustrating thing I think about working in this field.
What's the, sorry, go ahead, Kelsey. Or, no, Shelly, sorry.
Yeah, no, I was just wondering, so I'm not a Mac user, and so I bought a Mac for this course and stuff, and I was wondering, like, in the real world, do people usually just use Macs, or is it both ways? Should I actually become a Mac user?
So I would say in software development, Macs outnumber like Windows PCs 10-1, easy. I am not a Mac guy. In fact, right this very now, I am not on a Mac. This is Linux. There's like a pretty like small but very vocal contingent in software that's also like pretty loyal to Linux. But like Windows, and I'm not a Windows hater. Like I actually still do all my audio production stuff on Windows. I still have a partition on my hard drive for gaming and some of that kind of stuff, but it is a miserable thing to develop software on. And part of the reason for that is that Linux servers probably power something like 99% of the internet. And so if that's the medium that you're developing for, you probably want something that's as close to that as possible. So you can use actual Linux, like I do, or you can use Mac, which is Mac OS is like 90% the same as Linux, and it has a lot of like, at least has historically had a lot of very user-friendly things that make it so that you don't have to be a operating system dork to operate your computer. I think, especially in the last like 2 or 3 years, I think that teeter-totter has been moving a little bit. I think in a lot of ways Linux is a lot easier to use than like the more recent Mac OS updates. But yeah, friends don't let friends develop software on Windows. It's hard. It's unnecessarily hard. Oh, one asterisk on that. Some of you might be using WSL or Windows Subsystem for Linux. That's actually kind of a really like exciting development. So Linux is open source software. Anybody can use it in anything they want to, including a commercial operating system vendor like Microsoft. And so Microsoft was like, all right, cool. Here's also Linux, and it just runs inside of Windows. Are you happy now? Will you please stop leaving our operating system? And there's a couple snags with it. It's not one for one exactly the same as using like a regular dedicated desktop Linux thing, but students have gotten through the program just fine with that. I will say that the path of least resistance here and in your career is just become a Mac person. If that like grates your soul, you've got alternatives, but one of them is probably not having a happy, healthy career as a software developer on Windows.
What's like the piece of software or application that you're most proud of, or that you think is like the coolest thing that you've made or collaborated in making?
That would probably be, one I'm most proud of was this learning management system I made when I was at Pearson Education. That it was a multimodal platform. So what that means is you can have the exact same content and you can experience it as a textbook or a video series or a textbook with like interactive elements or a video series with interactive elements. And so you have these different use cases for all these things, like I'm on the bus right now, or I'm studying at home, or I want to review something real quick. And so we made like all like the ability to just seamlessly, they're just buttons. You can be on the same page and go, all right, start reading it to me. Or like, stop reading to me, I just want to read for a little bit. And just being able to toggle between all those different modalities. And so I was the lead developer on that. And I also did a lot of the like market research and validation on that. And I brought together a lot of different parts of the organization. And like I helped with like the media production, like that we got authors signed for it. And I went to San Francisco and like coached their performances and, you know, recorded them and did all the editing and stuff. And I worked with a team of like content specialists and some instructional designers and some visual designers. And like, that was a really great experience. What happened next was like not a great experience and I left the company, but building that platform was awesome.
What would you think are the main differences between a 4-year undergraduate computer science degree and a coding bootcamp
Sure.
certificate?
Probably the biggest one is that like the stuff that you learn here is actually valuable. But like seriously though, they aim to teach very different things. So a 4-year computer science degree is a math degree, like period. It's actually not about programming. You can graduate from a top CS program in the country and like not really write a single line of code. It's about understanding how computable something is, evaluating the computational complexity of something, like calculating how things grow, and then like a theoretical understanding of how computers work. Because a computer is a rock we tricked into thinking. Like that's fucking amazing. So the goal of a computer science program is to like grok that. And then presumably the myth goes at the end of that, you'll figure out programming in no time. And like, that's not actually what happens. What we do, the goal of a code school is we teach you how to do all of the things that actual software engineers do, and so that you can get a job as a software engineer and nothing will be all that unfamiliar. I would say that the code school world like has by and large been pretty successful at that, especially like Flatiron, Galvanize, like the name brands of this. There's like, there are a lot of very bad code schools, but you didn't pick one, so good for you. So I'd say the success rate on that has been pretty high. The success rate on the computer science side is a little bit more questionable. I don't know that graduates of those programs can reliably do those things. I think they can pass a test once, but for all that, like in the last 5 years, 7 years or so, CS people have looked down their nose at like code school folks. Yeah, but where's the data structures and algorithms that I had to do in my program? And then a code school student gets a book on data structures and algorithms, and 2 weeks later, they can do just as well as anybody else in data structures and algorithms problems. It goes, oh, well, maybe I didn't need to spend $100,000 in 4 years of my life to do that after all. Okay. So I've actually seen when I started in this business, it was how dare you try to condense my 4 years into 20 weeks or whatever it was. And I think that we've had this approach to education for long enough. We have people that have been very successful as code school grads that are VPs of engineering and senior engineers and principal engineers, like all over the industry. So now that we're seeing that like, oh shit, this works. The question isn't, well, it's not going to be as good as a CS degree, but can it be good enough? Now the question is like, holy shit, are CS degrees worth it? And my answer would be probably not. And like to wit, we have CS grads come through this program all the time. Like some of you might be CS grads and you went, cool, well, I know a lot of cool computer theory and math stuff now, but I can't get a job because I can't fucking program. So if you want to get a job writing software, this is where you should go, probably not a CS program.
Does most of your background come from a 4-year CS degree? You're saying that you got a master's in IT, but like, I guess coding, are you self-taught coder?
I got a master's in engineering management. So this is things like lean production, agile project management. It's kind of like my specialty. Things like that, and like leadership sort of stuff. My undergrad, my like relevant undergrad was computer information systems, which is databases. So how do different pieces of data relate to each other, and how do they grow, and how do you access them, things like that. So like in a lot of schools, that's just called library science because it's effectively the same thing. So I got a job as a database administrator. I said, cool, what databases do you want me to administer? They go, sorry, I said, it's gonna be a little bit different. We need to do some programming. I went, oh, I'm terrible at programming. I took a class in college, I sucked at it. And they're like, cool, do you want the job? I was like, all right, let's pro some Gram. And so then I was effectively self-taught. What else you want to know about me?
What kind of games do you play on that rig you were talking about?
Not as many as I used to. I've been really into Dead Cells on Switch lately. I'm like kind of on the tail end of a Breath of the Wild Master Mode run. See, last PC game I was super into was probably, like, I'm a sucker for the Deus Ex franchise. And it took me a long time to finally get around to, Mankind Divided.
And yeah,
A little bit of a letdown. Like, I'll take whatever time I can get in that universe, but I don't think that was the game that anybody wanted. But Human Revolution, that's like maybe a number one of all time for me. I also like the Borderlands series a lot, but I haven't got around to the latest one. A little about me as a gamer, I guess.
You have great taste in games.
Oh, thank you so much. What else do you want to know about me?
You say you're a business dork.
Mhm.
What kind of business are you talking about?
Management leadership stuff mostly. So I'm the executive director for an organization called Develop Denver, which, among other things, puts on an annual conference that would have been happening in a week. And then something happened. I can't remember what. Like I'd mentioned agile project management. That's like, I go pretty deep with that, and lean and empowerment managing and lots of that kind of stuff. So there's actually an engineering leadership book club on Denver Devs, which you all joined, right? And they're just getting started up. And the book that they're doing now is my favorite management book, probably of all time, which is called Widgets by Rod Wagner. And that gets a lot into like the management theory that I subscribe to.
All right. Nice.
you said Widgets by Rob Wagner.
Widgets by Rod Wagner, yeah. What else you want to know about me? Cool. Let's start digging in. All right, first section, we're going to talk about some code school stuff. So this is stuff that is fairly unique to Butte camps. Now, just like a preface to this, I fucking hate that term, boot camp. Like, I don't think it's a fair comparison to like what this experience is. It makes it sound like, I don't know. I feel like it just has some kind of baggage that it carries with it, and I don't know. I don't like it. So you'll hear me say code school a lot. It's boot camp. It's the same thing. It's just my preferred term for it. So first thing I want to say is that at some point in this program, probably I'm guessing around 4 or 5 weeks in or so, maybe, and then like again, probably to like around capstones or so, you're going to start getting like a lot of negative self-talk. It's like, oh no, I knew that the placement rate was too good to be true. No, like, it's this fly-by-night organization just came to take my money and I can't do anything. No one's going to hire me. Or like I talked to my dumb buddy and he like looked at my project and said they wouldn't hire somebody with this. Like, you're going to start telling yourself those kinds of stories. That's a perfectly normal part of this process. And it has to do with letting go of your identity a little bit. So I mentioned this is a transformational program. You will view yourself and your work very differently after this. But that also means that who you were starts dying a little bit. And it goes down kicking and screaming. And so that's usually the source of a lot of this kind of negative self-talk. More pragmatically, how we staff. Most code schools, including almost every other campus at Flatiron, will have, your cohort will have a lead instructor and like a coach. So like Christine is a coach. She graduated the program a couple weeks ago, wanted to pursue a career in tech education instead of going straight into programming. And so now she's here teaching with us also. And so most cohorts will have like a dedicated, like 1 or 2 person team that stays with them more or less through the program. We don't do that. And we don't do it for a bunch of reasons. One of them is that it's very brittle. So somebody wins the lottery, like gets promoted, any number of other things. Now your teaching team is falling apart. And so we want to be as resilient to that as possible by giving you a wide variety of instructors. Another reason is you're going to connect with different instructors on different kinds of things. So like, for example, I'd mentioned that I'm super into agility. It's going to come up on all of your projects and like, maybe I'm the guy you want to talk to about that. Also, I don't know almost anything about React, Native, React's approach to state management. That's like, I got some blind spots in this stuff that Damon doesn't have. And, or it might even just be personality wise, like, he's the guy who swears a lot and tells jokes. I like that guy. It's my kind of guy. Or like, you might like that Jesse has like a more measured approach. Christine has a more measured approach. Ahmed's like a different kind of goofy. Like, so whatever it is, if we have all of these resources on staff, why would I like keep any of them back from you? And so all of them are like, all of us are people you can learn from and connect with in different sorts of ways. So you have access to all of that. Also, we notice different things and different patterns and stuff in you. And so as an instructional staff, we view this as, 6 teachers or however many we have, teaching 60 students. And that gives us a lot of different perspectives on all these issues. So for all those reasons, we look at this as all of us teaching all of you. You don't get dedicated instructors. And while there are some benefits to having dedicated instructors, I think that they are far outweighed by the way that we staff here. Some other stuff. We eat lunch too. So broadly speaking, you'll have somebody available 9 to 6. In real life, that's more like 9 to 5. Like at 5 o'clock, we start winding down the day. And then also we have lunch. So what that means is that like, you're not guaranteed that there's somebody that's going to be able to debug your problem or talk you off the ledge or whatever during those times. However, you can still ask. It never hurts to ask. Nobody's ever mad at you for asking to like review a project at 9 at night. But don't get hurt feelings if it doesn't happen until the next day, because we have to work way more sustainably than you do. I mentioned I've been doing this for 5 years. You can't boot camp for 5 years. So we got to like run a little bit more marathon pace. Jobs. So this means 2 things. One is that this is not a job factory. You did not purchase a job. So you still have to do the work. Like you have to do well in the program. And then when you start applying, nobody gives a shit that you graduated from Flatiron School. Like it's not, there's no like prestigious elite institution benefit that you get. You get the opposite of that sometimes. Like there are like the DU boot camp, like a lot of those will just get auto trashed. But here, Galvanize, Turing, Thinkful, like any of the reasonable ones, you don't get any kind of elite prestige. And frankly, like plenty of engineers are still self-taught. And so don't rely on the credential to really do much of anything for you. Now, we still provide tons of support. And I think maybe one of the biggest differentiators that Flatiron has, it has the best career services, like period, the end, by like an order of magnitude. The way career services works here, like they just got this right. And so you'll get a lot of support, but the support implies you're still doing all of the work. So that's thing number one that this means. Thing number two that this means is you cannot work and do a program like this. If you were wondering, like, well, I know, like, I'll just drive Uber a little bit on the weekends. That has yet to work out. 700 students, there's always somebody that like thinks they're gonna second guess me on this because, oh, I worked while I was in college or something like that. This is different. This is transformational education. So this is not work around the clock. I don't believe in homework and like, really after we clap out for the day, like we're done. But that recovering from all of this work, you can't recover from it by driving around. Like you're gonna be exhausted. And so I need you to take that time to recover and get a good night's sleep. Or even like play around with some of the tech stuff for fun. But like there's really no room for the other stuff. And so if that's a problem, like you should start figuring out some arrangements right now. Because just about everybody that does like, oh, it's every other Saturday or something, so far one of them has not completed the program yet on time, period. And most of them end up dropping out or otherwise just not really getting what they came here to get. Because if you have one foot in old life and one foot in new life, you really haven't made the jump, and you have to make the jump for this to work. That's a recipe for you spending the next year as whatever you have been doing on the weekend. So start figuring out that problem now if you haven't already. And then this last thing is a question I get asked a lot is, are boot camps flooding the industry with juniors? Like people bring that up all the time. And like it's mathematically not possible. So this thing right here, this was back when it was about 600 students. So this was, you know, a little less than a year ago. My guess was that I had taught about 600 students in Colorado, and then all the other schools together in Colorado, it's probably another 600 students in software engineering for boot camps. And that was over a period of 5 years, 4 years, somewhere in there. And in that time, I think that there was something like 70,000 tech jobs added to the Colorado economy. And like nobody does this with the colleges. The colleges put out thousands of grads a year. The reason why code school grads, like you just can't swing a dead cat without hitting a code school grad. And it's true, that's absolutely true. But it's because you're so much more competitive. You don't have to do this shit where you go down to some DTC job and work as like a test runner for a year and a half before somebody lets you write a line of code. And so you end up applying for the same jobs that a lot of people who've been doing that for 2 or 3 years are doing. And so it looks like you're everywhere, but it's only because you're very competitive. And it's also the case that like startups in particular are very wary of hiring new grads. They're so resource constrained, like they can't take risks on people very much. But you are far less a risky proposition than a CS grad who like is really interested in learning programming. So you end up seeing code school grads at startups in way higher numbers than you would fresh CS grads. That also makes them look like there are a lot more than there actually are. And since I wrote this, actually they did some research. I've seen some hard numbers on this. My numbers aren't that far off from when I did this originally.
I have a quick question.
Hit me.
So before we started this, like like this past week. I was just looking at jobs, just trying to see like what I want to do within the industry. And I saw a lot of them required a CS degree. Is that like necessarily true, or like how does that kind of work out?
No, that's a lie. So
Okay.
it's this particular lie right here. You'll also see it with years of experience. And here's the giveaway on this one. You always see these numbers. Looking for someone with 0 to 2 years experience in this, 1 to 3 years experience in this, 3 to 5 years experience in this. See the same numbers over and over again. The 7+, not 8+, not 6+, it's always 7+. So this is recruiter shorthand. Recruiters will go, hey, hiring manager, what do you need? And they go, I need somebody who's like killer at React. And they go, awesome, coming right up. And then they write the job description as requires 5 to 7 years of React experience. And that gets especially funny because React hasn't been out for that long. So you'll see like tech people roast recruiters over that all the time. But the reason they do that is they use these years experience for everything. They use it for salespeople, they use it for managers, they use it for accountants. And so they go, oh, you want somebody who's really good at React? Well, really good means 5 to 7 years of experience. They'll do the same thing with like required degrees. And ultimately, all those things are wish lists. We wish you had a degree in computer science, and we wish that you had 3 to 5 years of experience with Angular. But like they also have to take what they can get. If the pay for that is $50,000, well, good luck. Sounds like everybody's going to have to make some compromises. And my rule of thumb on this is that if a job sounds interesting to you, apply. I don't care if you don't have a single of the things they've listed as hard requirements, must have, please do not apply. It's not your job to disqualify yourself. Whatever, waste their time. Their investment in you so far is like you went to their website. That's nothing. So, all right, make a little imposition on them. Say, all right, well, here's my shit. Are you interested? And if the answer is no, all right, well, then you're in the exact same place that you were before you applied, but you took a shot. And like if you are looking for a boot camp grad with experience in Rails and React, like that's not going to happen. And the reason that's not going to happen is if you post that, you won't even get all the way down on the send button before you get flooded by 500 of the laziest job applications you've ever seen. So nobody does it. But yeah, if somebody says something is required, like that's either a recruiter who's just going off of some boilerplate template, or it might be wishful thinking, but you might be the most qualified person they get. So it's never your job to disqualify yourself. Apply, apply, apply. Cool. So that's what I wanted to talk to you about with code school stuff. So we talked about some negative self-talk. We talked about our staffing model. We talked about how you can't have a job. We talked about how we don't sell jobs. We talked about how instructors eat lunch too. And we talked about how we are in no way flooding any particular market with junior developers. Ask me some questions about this.
So with the career services that's offered with Flatiron,
Yeah.
does that include like helping you set up a LinkedIn, like using the right language that employers are looking for?
Oh yeah. So this is LinkedIn stuff, and some of this you'll do in the program, but it's LinkedIn stuff. It's your resume. They give you like interview training, like the whole bit.
I do actually have another question kind of like on the job thing. I'm curious, what is expected like appearance wise? Like, is it casual? Is it business casual? Like, are they open to like things that aren't, I guess, traditionally professional, or are they more progressive?
So like that adage, dress for the job you want, like it's more or less true. if you want to work in startup land, like if you wear a suit, you'll get auto disqualified. Nobody wants to work with a suit in startup land. But like that doesn't mean there's not a uniform. There kind of is. You kind of have to look like a startup person. Like you can define that however you want. Versus if you go to work for Charles Schwab, like, well, you don't have to wear a suit, like maybe not with a jacket, and so there's that range in there. And you probably already know which of those cultures is more appealing to you. And there's a lot in between there also. There's plenty of like polo shirt kinds of jobs, and there's plenty of jobs where like what I'm wearing right now would be considered fancy. And there's jobs where I'd be horribly underdressed. But I've noticed that it's not random. They tend to go along with the markets that they work in. And so if it's a financial services company, everybody kind of dresses like financial services sorts of people. If it's cool, hip, social media kind of stuff, well, everybody kind of dresses like Zuckerberg. Or the lady equivalent of Zuckerberg. But you don't have to necessarily get a undye your hair or go with a conservative style of dress or any of that kind of stuff. You do need to target it for what you're applying for, though.
Okay.
So I would recommend making some choices there.
Oh, sorry.
Oh no, go ahead.
Thanks. I just had a question, as far as like what's going on in the world, and a lot of companies are going more remote.
Yeah.
Do you believe that companies will stay going remote? Do you think that has changed the industry for a long time? I mean, I would personally probably like to work remote, but that's to be,
sure,
for the future. So
I'm having a really hard time buying that the companies that survive this, who have been remote this whole time, are going to be champing at the bit to get back in person. And it's not because there are no benefits to in person. I actually prefer it overall. But like that office space is fucking expensive. And if everybody just gets to not put that on their books, then it becomes like, all right, can we justify the expense of having an office? Like, does that pay for itself? And that's going to be a really hard circle to square, I think, for a lot of companies. So I'm guessing that this industry in particular is like remote by default indefinitely, especially since it can be. Like I love physically sitting next to somebody at a station and pointing at a screen and like talking shit at lunch and like all that kind of stuff. But if that's the thing that we had to add back in, I don't think you could really justify the expense. So we're probably remote for a while. Well, especially since I highly doubt it's going to be, all right, everybody knows exactly what's going on with COVID. We just get this shot and then we're back to normal. Like, that's not what's going to happen. It'll be like, all right, well, this industry is going to collapse if people don't go back in person. And it's going to be kind of like the NFL is this year, where like people are opting out and stuff. Tech kind of has no excuses. Like, it's, of every single industry, this is probably the one that works the best remotely. So we're probably going to be the last to go back to in person if that happens at all.
Bouncing off that kind of idea, I had this thought with that mindset a few days ago, with that, tech's probably going to remain remote. How much does that open the door, you think, for us to apply for jobs that aren't even domestic?
Substantial. Now, keep in mind that, like, by domestic, like, there's still like work visa issues working overseas, even if like you're not physically there. I interviewed with a company once that was a Canadian company, but they had an American shell company that like I would have been employed by. That was a wholly owned subsidiary of the Canadian company. And so you still have like some of those kinds of cross country international work restrictions to contend with. So keep that in mind. Between states, it's still like right now today, it's not quite as much of an open field as you might think, because a lot of companies are still hedging like, oh, maybe we'll all have it figured out and we can just go back to our office next month. In which case, I want somebody who's local. Like, I think that more and more companies every month are kind of giving up the ghost on that. And so this is net benefit for us big time, because we're about to see a massive exodus from San Francisco. They're like, wait a minute, I can't effectively hire local San Francisco people, and I don't have to pay these insane wages to keep up with the San Francisco Joneses, or like pay for housing around here. So I can pay for a better engineer in Denver and pay 70% as much. Done. So I think this is going to play to your benefit, but it's still kind of a slow process.
Do you think?
Sorry for that. I had a quick question. So my wife is a technical recruiter at Quizlet, and they have a direct streamline with a few boot camps around Denver to get into their internship program.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any company that's partnered with Flatiron like that?
Kinda. So we let's see. I'm trying to think of the name of the company. I always space their name. They're in Fort Collins. And Christine, you know who it is. Is Christine still on the call?
Yeah, I'm here.
Who is that? Like, they've hired something like 20 Flatiron grads.
Oh, Bilgo?
Bilgo, there we go. So Bilgo is probably the one we have the strongest relationship with. And then I was checking, is Taylor Draper your wife?
Yeah, actually, she is. You know her?
Well, like I got a recruiting email from her a couple months ago.
Oh yeah, that's her.
Awesome. So, and like we have they're called employer partnerships. Kate Williamson, you might have like talked to her at a recruiting event or something like that. That's her job, is to set up those relationships. Bilgo is one that I know about. Oh, and IHS Market is another one we have a very good pipeline with. And I know there's a lot more, but I don't have a ton of visibility into that. But those are two I know for sure. And I know we have somebody who works full-time on building those relationships. Cool. What else?
Do you think that this shift to remote working, will it affect entry-level jobs?
That's a good question. The shift to remote won't. Like a potential economic contraction could, as like, all right, never mind, everybody was wrong, the economy is collapsing. Yeah, they're like, tech people are probably better positioned than anyone else, like if that happens, but you usually see a crunch where like everybody is fighting for the same mid jobs, and so some of those people get pushed down into the junior jobs, and all of a sudden the junior jobs are way more competitive than they used to. That could happen. The remote thing, like it's hard to do like onboarding and training and culture building remote. The like kind of sad part of that is that most companies are so bad at that to begin with that probably doesn't make that much of a difference. And the ones who had really strong programs for that probably also made really strong programs for that remotely. Like our team in Flatiron, that's like I said, effectively what we did. And so, like I don't think all that much changes from that, honestly. What else? Cool. So I'd like you to get a little bit active. For the next 5 minutes, I would like you to summarize your takeaways from what we just talked about. Negative self-talk, our scheduling, how we staff, jobs, juniors, all the questions people asked. Take a couple minutes and just brain dump. Give me all the things you took out of this. Go.
Be okay with becoming a new person.
Oh, not out loud.
Oh, okay, got you.
But excellent. You can do this pen and paper. You can do this digital. I don't care. But just write it down. Like actually write it down. Don't just think about it somewhere. Go. Let's take another minute. All right, cool. So give me some takeaways. On reflection, what did you take out of this section?
You're not guaranteed a job. You got to put the work in and all of that. And don't be afraid to apply to things that may seem above you.
Yes. That's super true. You got to put in the work, and this is especially like affects women disproportionately. But like, oh, it says it's a senior job with 5 years of React required. Does the job sound cool to you? Does it sound interesting? A lot of those things that go like, oh no, that's exactly what we were looking for, but then we saw your background. Like, give them the opportunity to say no at least. Cool. More takeaways.
Being able to change yourself through a new career path and not staying in the same old job that you don't like anymore.
Yes. Very good. Give me 2 more.
It's normal to get discouraged, but you need to work through it.
Yep. I don't think this is actually on the diagram anywhere, but I'll tell you this also. I'd say a typical code school like emotional shape kind of looks like this. We're gonna have fun. We're gonna get better. We're gonna feel invincible, and then, oh man, this is really hard. Ah, shit, my bills are starting to pile up, and I call this area here the trough. And then, if you keep going, things start getting a little bit better, and then they start getting better, and they start getting better, and then they start getting better. Timing wise, the trough happens most frequently in mod 3. Sometimes it's mod 4. Sometimes it's a little bit earlier. I've also heard people like describe their weeks as having this shape. And like, that's normal. Like, I'd say it has nothing to do with your ability or even your attitude. This shape, that happens to most people's emotions over the course of a program like this. But if you can recognize that you're in the trough and remind yourself that you just got to keep going, you'll climb out of it sooner or later. You have to. Cool. One more takeaway.
That we are software developers right now.
Yes. Yes, you are. It's funny. I was just having that talk with the capstoners this morning. That like, and you'll notice if you've ever been to a Flatiron Capstones, they always start by saying like, "Hi, my name is Liz Love, and I'm a software engineer." And it's like, it's kind of a scary thing to say. It's like, well, no, I'm not. I'm a waiter. No, I'm a bricklayer. I'm whatever you were before. But when you say that, like, not only is it empowering, it's also attractive. Because when you go, I'm a software engineering student, companies go, well, we don't hire students, we hire devs. So you go, I'm a dev. You go, oh, cool, that's exactly what we're looking for. Cool. So we're going to move on to education stuff, but we've been at this for an hour. So let's take 5. I'll see you guys back at 3:09. hello. I didn't see you there. Hey, everybody. Welcome back. So, if you wouldn't mind re-cameraing, I'd sure appreciate it. All right, let's talk about some ed stuff. So a couple things I want to talk about in here. First is this idea of triangulating the truth. So at different points in this program, I'm going to say something, and then Damon's going to say another thing, and then Ahmad's going to say another thing, and then your dumb buddy who's real good at computers is going to say something else, and they're going to be in direct conflict with each other. This is absolutely fine. There is a lot more wiggle room in tech than I think a lot of people assume. This is in the same category as like, oh, well, but it's not creative. It's just beep, boop, beep, boop. No, it's super creative. It's very human. And that means that there are a lot of areas that are interpretive. And so if anything, when these things are not in alignment, maybe one of your takeaways should be that, all right, well, a bunch of people who make money with this, like, all believe different things and they all stay employed. And my truth is probably somewhere inside of this. Next thing, we do not do grades here. There is no B- in server-side development. And man, does this, like, if you are really good at school, this is a disconcerting thing. This is hard to get used to. The idea that we don't give you scores on shit. Even like our code challenge assessments, for the last year, those have numbers on them, but for the last year, we don't use them to mean anything other than like a 3 is a pass, and anything that's less than a 3 is not a pass. But past that, don't read too much into it, because we do mastery-based education. Mastery-based education means if we think that you should know something by the end of the program, we hold you accountable for knowing it. Ta-da! Not 97% of it, not 60% of it, not, well, you don't get this at all, but you're pretty good at this other thing. Like all the required parts of the program, you should be able to do all of those things. And if you're struggling with them, rather than go, well, let's just say you sort of suck and give you a C+ and call it a day, I'd rather we stop, slow down, and spend some time figuring out how to get you to mastery on whatever thing that we're doing. So yeah, don't go looking for the grade book. It doesn't exist, and that's intentional. Speaking of which, I call this the, I guess I don't have a snappy name for this, but these 4 things: employer expectations, standards, assessments, contents. This is my approach to organizing this program. We're trying to make you employable. That is the explicit goal of this program. And so we're starting with, what do employers want out of their hires? And then we try to codify that in standards. So that ends up looking like this. Okay, so these are the standards for Mod 1. We think you should be able to demonstrate basic programming proficiency in Ruby, iterate over collections, build classes and objects. This is our best guess at the kinds of things that an employer should want you to be able to do. And they go, demonstrate basic programming proficiency in Ruby. Well, Kyle, that could mean an awful lot of different things. Why, yes, it could. Which is why we measure those with assessments. So like this one in particular, if you can confidently get through this exercise, I think that you can demonstrate basic programming proficiency in Ruby. So we say that you've met that standard, which means that that part of an employer's expectation, you're on track for. And then the last piece of this is the content. This is how you get good enough to be able to pass that assessment. We have so many different ways that you can do that. You can go to like an instructor-driven lesson. You can watch a video of a lesson like that. You can read a book. You can go through a Learn Lab. You can chat through it with somebody one-on-one or do like a small group study session. But this is supposed to be like a rope that all these things hang off of. Each one depends on the one above it. So if like employers didn't actually care about the demonstrating basic programming proficiency, then whomp, doesn't matter that you nailed the assessment, and it doesn't matter that you went to the coolest lesson ever on it. Or if this content is super good at something that doesn't relate to an assessment or doesn't relate to anything that employer is looking for, well then who gives a shit? So the way that most people structure their programs is they come up with a bunch of content they want to teach. They figure out a way to assess whether or not you remember the things that they taught. They group it in units or something like that that are completely arbitrary most of the time, and then pray that an employer will find the thing that they did valuable. We do this the exact opposite. What this, like, the most jarring thing about this in practice is that none of the content that we do here is required. I don't care if you go to a single in-person lesson, like pretty much for the rest of the program. If all you want to do is watch videos, then by all means do that. We also don't have labs that you're required to do. You could also never do another Learn Lab. If you got like a book that you want or something like that, I'm way flexy on the content. That's not important. What's important is that you're able to demonstrate these skills, which mean that you can do these things, which are a thing that employers care about. So the loosey-goosey approach to content takes some serious getting used to. And like tomorrow, your second day in this program looks an awful lot like your 70th day in this program. And so be patient with yourself, like getting used to that much ownership of your education and making choices about which content to use. And you're going to make some mistakes, and that's completely fine. It's also a very forgiving program. But yeah, there's very little like, all right, read page 79 and do problems 1 through 20. So we do have some recommendations, like for getting better at your programming proficiency in Ruby. How about all of these things? But you don't get a prize if you get through all of them. You don't get a prize if you do none of them. They're just tools. They're options for you. And so if you gave this assessment a shot and you're like, I really struggled with the like methods and stuff. All right, well, we got a whole bunch of stuff with methods. Why don't you start there and see if going through those doesn't help you out a little bit. Tons of autonomy on how you handle that. Let's see. Next. Actually, I'm going to pause there. Why don't you ask me some questions about that? Any of these things.
So with the end of like this whole school and stuff, how does it become like, how do we show like an employer like, oh, I went to Flatirons, like, is it a diploma? Like, like, I don't know, kind of weird question, but
sure. No one will
some
ask.
sort of, okay.
Like,
is it just like you show them your projects?
You'll have your projects, but and you'll get a diploma. Actually, I don't think we're allowed to call it a diploma. It's a certificate. It's like there's like legal requirements around those words. No one will ask. Like that's not important. They care about your work. They'll want to see you demonstrating that you can do these things through like your projects and that kind of stuff. But I would be shocked if anybody was like, you went to Flatiron? Prove it. What else?
You said we won't be doing like a Learn Lab or something. So what will we be doing instead?
You can do the Learn Labs. You're just not required to do Learn Labs. They're still a great tool, especially in the first mod. First two mods, I think people usually rely very heavily on Learn Labs. significantly less so in Mod 3 and probably less in Mod 4 than they should. But all I'm saying is that you don't have to use any particular content.
Okay.
As long as you can do the stuff, like, I don't want to waste your time. So that's why the Learn Labs are optional, the lessons are optional. I want you to choose what's best for your learning.
All right.
What else? Cool. Onward. So, what was there something in there? All right. So one of the most important things that you're going to get out of this program is learning to learn. Because when, as a working software developer, you go, okay, well, I'm a Rails person, I'm a Python person, and you find this really cool job and they want you to use Angular. You don't go back to school, you just learn Angular, you figure it out. This is like probably one of the most baseline expectations of a software dev is like, cool, figure it out. When I started teaching at Flatiron, I had never written a line of Ruby in my life. And they didn't even ask. Like, I was on the job and they're like, all right, cool. So do you know Ruby? I said, nope. I'm like, all right, well, go learn Ruby. that was like the first thing I did on the job here. And that's the skill that you want to have. Not like, well, this is all old man Coberly taught me, and so hopefully this like keeps me employed forever. So we'll do what I call like a gradual release of responsibility, where early on in the program, you get an awful lot of direction and guidance and things that you should do. So that's day one, and this is like capstone presentations. Ideally, this is just a smooth release of control where by the time you get to graduation, you are completely independent. I'm not gonna lie, there's also what actually happens probably looks a lot more like this. And so it feels like there's these really steep drop-offs. And like, that's just the nature of it. At the end of every mod, at the start of the new one, it's like, I feel like I'm all on my own now. And it's not true. We're just trying to coach you through this learning to learn process. I was just telling the mod 3s this morning, the mod 3 one is probably the steepest drop off. It's like, it's gonna feel like you're on your own. The safety net is still under you. There's still lessons, there's still instructor support, there's still all of these things, but more and more and more as you go through the program, you're just taking responsibility for your own outcomes. It ends up being a good thing, and I've done it a lot of times. It works, I promise you. And that's part of why your trajectory after you graduate looks like that. You just keep on learning. And a thing that I've heard over and over again when people start jobs is, wow, my first week on the job was just like my 17th week of school. And like, that's how we want that to feel. I want that to be a really smooth onboarding. And then for like your first year, 2 years, 3 years of your career, like you keep learning this much, just a shit ton. So we're not trying to teach you everything that you'll do in your career at school, like college is kind of attempting to. What we're trying to do is give you a trajectory that will make you employable, and then while you're employed, you can keep growing. Some other things. There's a couple things that we'll do in the program that I think have disproportionate impact on your success. Typing speed is definitely one of them. If you are not a touch typist by now, well, fix that. Because like otherwise, hope you get a remote interview because you're hunting pecking, like that's a bad beat. So you want to be touch typist and you want to be fast. So by fast, that would be like at a regular typing speed, 85, 80 words a minute, somewhere in there. Programming typing speed is usually about half that. So if you can get up to like 40 words a minute typing, that helps a lot. Knowing your text editor. So if you do not already have a text editor preference, I probably recommended VS Code. Absolutely fine place to start. I'd say that is the dominant editor in the business right now. So start learning your keyboard shortcuts. Try to pick up a new one every day. Every time you find yourself doing something kind of manual in your text editor, see if there's some kind of shortcut or plugin or something like that that could help with it. But getting better at your text editor, oof, that's a good one. Not as relevant in Mod 1, but your browser dev tools, which look like this. You might have accidentally found yourself in here at some point. This is like one of the most valuable tools you have as a web developer. Being able to see all the network requests and see what's coming through and examining it. This is your best debugging tool. So getting better at this will help a lot. And then like, there's a very strange thing about command lines where anything you do on a command line, it's like, oh, wow, this is some 1970s shit. And like it is. A lot of those tools were made in like the early 1970s. In fact, you can even see sometimes, let's see. All right, let's see if this one was 2018. But that's like the latest version. PWD had to have been early 70s. Maybe, let's see. What's another one that's probably really old? Now that's the new copyright too. LS, that was absolutely a 1970 creation. So that's not like, oh, so they're probably going to fix this any day now. If you've ever done any like Bayesian statistics before, you know that if something has been around for 50 years, that means that there's a very high likelihood that it'll be around another 50 years. So I've never seen somebody regret getting better at command line tools. We don't talk about them a ton at Flatiron, but oh boy, is that like probably worth a little bit of independent study. Okay, so we talked about those. We talked about learning trajectories. Cool. Questions about anything we just talked about?
With the dev tools, the command line, and those things that we need to learn, are we going to have like maybe like an optional course or lesson on that?
Yeah. So one of the coolest things about how we schedule stuff in Denver Flatiron, this is Denver specific too, nobody else does this, is we source all the lessons that we teach for the day out of your requests. For example, let me bring this over here. All right, so this is the announce channel. This is the schedule for the day. Last week was all projects, so we won't have a lot there. But if I keep on going back and back and back to when it was a regular week, there we go. Here's a regular week. So what we'll do in stand up, that meeting that we have in the morning, is we'll go, cool, what do you want to learn today? And then you tell us, and then the instructors get together and we make the schedule. Hey, what do you know? Dev tools. Cool thing about these, just about every lesson we do in this program is open to anybody. So you might be in students from other mods. You might be in with alums. Alums love dropping in some of these lessons. If you are in a later mod and you see a lesson from an earlier mod, you're like, God, I'd love just another 45 minutes on that. You should feel free to drop in. If you want to pop into some like React lesson to see, where this horrible train you're on is going, like, we don't take attendance in this stuff, and like, you are always welcome to come into any of these. We try to use these emojis to help you like figure out, I don't know if this is actually helping much of anything, but help you figure out what some of them are. But that's driven purely by your, well, not purely, 80% by your requests. So like, yeah, if you want a VS Code lesson, just make sure you ask for it, and we'll see if we can get it in schedule. What else?
Are there any particular dev tools for VS Code that you think are like must-haves? The only one I've got right now, I think, is Live Server, which is pretty great.
I'm the dead wrong person to ask about that, because I saw it a little bit here. I'm a Vim guy, so we'll probably talk about this at some point tomorrow, but yeah, all my code looks like this. It is all command line stuff. And you're like, wow, Kyle, that looks like it's from the 1970s. It is. And I still think it is the best text editor out there today. But unless like you really are a glutton for punishment with text editors, you probably have better uses of your time in the program than learning Vim. There's always like one person I can't talk out of like not using Vim. So if that's you, like, hit me up. I got some advice. But for everybody else, VS Code is absolutely fine. It's like an industry default right now. And somebody other than me is probably a good source of recommendation for what plugins and stuff you should get. But if you like Vim stuff, then let's see. Nope. Then here's all my Vim plugins. God, even the config. You edit the config for a text editor with a text editor? What madness is this? Cool, what else? All right. So the zone of proximal development. This is such an important thing. I've been trying to have this conversation with my 8-year-old now for like a month. So zone of proximal development, we've got 3 different parts of this. We have this green area here. That's our safety zone. This is stuff that we can do without anybody helping us. We can do this stuff in our sleep. This red zone here, this is something that you can't do no matter how much somebody else is helping you. They're essentially just doing it for you if they're helping you. And in between those 2 poles is what we call the zone of proximal development. This is stuff that you can do with a little bit of prompting, with some assistance. If somebody fills in some of the blanks for you, this is stuff that you can get done. Learning happens inside your ZPD. Doesn't happen in the comfort zone, doesn't happen in the panic zone. So your goal is to stay in the ZPD as much as possible throughout the program. And you go, that sounds exciting. It's like riding an awesome wave. Yes, but the problem with that is that if you're doing this right, you always feel like you're not getting it. Right? Because you're always in this struggle area. Staying in the struggle zone for fucking 15 weeks, it's emotionally exhausting. But if you can do that, this is part of that personal transformation I keep talking about. I'll tell you a story. 5 years ago, as a student, she was graduating, and she's in her last week of capstones and just having a fucking meltdown. So we go for a walk around Commons Park, and she says, when do you stop feeling so stupid all the time in this business? And I said, oh, like, maybe you've misunderstood. That's not the thing that changes. I feel dumb all the time. Like, you will, if you're any good at this job, you will always feel like you're not getting it. The thing that changes is your relationship with that feeling. It stops being a thing you're afraid of, stops being a thing you're ashamed of. You're not trying to run away from it. It's something you have a very neutral or even excited relationship with, where you go like, man, I have no clue how this works. All right, let's figure it out. That's the attitude you want to have with stuff that you're not getting. And it takes a while to develop those muscles. And it takes a lot of experience too, because the thing that gives you confidence that like, all right, I have no clue how this works, but yeah, I'll figure it out, is that the last 500 times you find yourself in that position, you came out the other side of it okay. And so you need to like build up enough of a track record for you to believe yourself. And that's part of what we're doing in the program here. But you're going to be tempted many, many times to just hang out in comfort land, especially after you nail something really difficult. Just like, no, I just want to like do this for a couple more weeks. And like, we don't have time for that. Got to stay in your ZPD. And that means signing up for pretty much nonstop frustration. It's rewarding though. And if you can change your relationship with that feeling of being stuck, like that's what makes you successful in this industry. Cool. So this is another like negative self-talky kind of thing. You know, like, oh, this is so slow. This is so fast. I'm lost. This especially is a thing in these first 2 weeks that you'll kind of have to get a feel for. So if you like were diligent as hell in the pre-work, then there's things that happen in Mod 1 that you're just gonna go like, why didn't everybody come in knowing this? Or like, this is another thing. If you have previous like IT experience, or you're like sort of dev adjacent, or maybe you used to be a programmer and you're just trying to modernize a little bit, you are in the biggest risk category for having a great Mod 1 and a terrible Mods 2 through 6. So if you find yourself thinking that something is too slow, talk to a grown-up. Like, there might be, first of all, there might be parts of it that you're not getting, but let's say, no, I've been programmed forever, loops and variables, I got all this kind of stuff. Well, this is one of the reasons you don't have to come to lessons. So if there's like a beginning enumerables lesson, you're map filter reduce champion, like by all means, don't waste your time, don't go to that. But talk to a grown-up, and you can always make this stuff harder. You can go, all right, well, you can do these, can you do a harder one? Or can you do the enumerables in JavaScript? Can you do them in Python? Can you do them in C? You can make your own hard mode pretty well in this. And if you do have some programming experience, like I'd recommend reaching out to somebody about that. Because the worst thing, I've seen this over and over and over and over again, that can happen to you is if you instead are the other kind of person and you go, oh my God, I don't get any of this. I'm barely a proficient computer operator. What you're learning how to do is hustle. And that's going to serve you really well. By the time we get to Mod 2, I don't care how much like previous IT experience you had. There's just going to be so much shit you don't know in there. And if you have learned how to hustle and like arrange your life such that, and your emotions and your expectations, that you can be successful with not knowing things, you're going to be great in this program. If you're like, how you view this program was formed primarily by how easy the first 3 weeks was for you, like it's going to be really hard to reconvince yourself to take it seriously. And that's the pattern that I see is, nah, I know how to write a loop. And we're like, all right, cool. Now make a fetch request to this RESTful API. And they're like, can we go back to the easy stuff? And the hustle isn't there, and you struggle to catch up for the rest of the program. So if you find the like first 2 weeks too easy, then like talk to somebody. Let's make sure you're getting challenged. Likewise, if you think everything is moving too fast, that's what we see way more often. And one of the things that you will have to make peace with is that you're not going to know everything. Every single topic that we teach in this program has infinite depth to it. Even like seemingly kind of simple stuff like HTML. HTML, you have an entire career like just going down the rabbit hole on that. So what you do instead is you use these assessments. This is your bottom on this. Iterating over collections, we could spend 15 weeks just on that. There's like so much cool shit I'd love to talk to you guys about that like we just scratched the surface of in these like first few days. What you are accountable for is being able to do this. If you can do this, I think you know enough about this to move on. There's a certain personality type that has a real fucking hard time with that. And so whatever, that's one of the muscles you're gonna have to develop in the program, is like being okay with only kind of getting it. But when we talk about mastery, what we mean is, can you confidently pass the assessment for a standard? And if you can do that, I would say that you have mastered iterating over collections using built-in methods, even though there's months more material we could do on that. And that's another one that like you can just check in with someone. Talk to a peer, you can talk to another, to an instructor and say like, hey, I'm feeling way behind, way lost. Here's what I know, here's what I don't know. And if you start there, we can give you a pretty good assessment of like, well, you are actually a little bit behind. And so here's what I'd recommend you do to catch up. Or is like, no, you're exactly where everyone is. Because what people do is they make these huge assumptions about where everyone else is at. And it's usually based off of some question they heard somebody ask in class, like, I would never be able to be smart enough to ask a question like that. And the reality of it looks a lot like this. Somebody may legit know something that you don't know. That doesn't mean they also know everything that you know and aren't struggling with anything you're struggling with. They're just also doing all these other things. That's how it works in your head, but that's not how it works in real life. Cool. So we talked about ZPD and we talked about some more self-talky kinds of things. Hit me with some questions. Cool. So one of the things that you were very likely to ask several times in the first couple days in particular is, I'm lost, I don't know what I should be doing right now. So your answer to that can almost always be found at flatiron-school-denver.firebaseapp.com. How's about you go there right now and bookmark it, because you're going to spend a lot of time on it.
Can you say that one more time?
flatiron-school-denver.firebaseapp.com. Like that. Or hey, even better, like that. So this does not replace Learn. this is on top of Learn. This is your Sherpa through the program. We got 5 mods. There's your 5 mods. These are the standards for each mod. Start at the first one. See if you can pass the assessment. If you can't pass the assessment, here's some resources that you can use to get better at that. Once you feel confident you can do this thing, you go to the next one. Rinse, repeat for 4 mods, and then you do capstones. In addition, over in this videos area, also like the login, the logout, create, like that stuff's all for instructors. You don't have that. You don't need to log in. There's no login required for this. So we also have videos of damn near every lesson we've ever taught at this school. So many, and all of them are wide open to you. And a lot of this stuff we don't teach in the program normally at all. For example, we don't really cover design stuff in the program. However, any day now, we sure do have a lot of lessons on design. So if that kind of stuff is up your alley, here it is. Same thing with anything you're struggling with. You're struggling with enumerables in Ruby. You can go to one of our in-person lessons, or you can just go to one of our million fucking lessons we have on it. It might be exactly the same as the one that we're doing. Oh, I'm only having a hard time with reduce because reduce is the weird one. Well, there you go. And I kind of like how Ahmed does it a little bit better. All right, well, here's Ahmed teaching it. So many options, a veritable buffet of knowledge. So despite me telling you this, at some point in the next couple of days, you're gonna go, I don't know what I should be doing. But this is the answer you're gonna get. Doesn't mean you don't have to ask, you're not allowed to ask the question, but yeah, find the mod you're in, figure out the thing you can do, start at the top, work your way down to the bottom. My recommendation. So one of the reasons that you're not going to remember that, even though I just said it, is because of the illusion of competence. So the problem with lectures, the reason we don't really do them here, is if I say something and you can follow my train of thought and you're kind of nodding along, you think that's the same thing as knowing the thing that I'm saying. Pretty reasonable assumption, right? I say something, you hear it, and then you know it. It's not how brains work at all, like not even fucking close. You've experienced this anytime you like saw a really cool TED Talk and you're like, oh man, this guy was talking about this amazing thing. It was like, I'm having a hard time explaining it now. It was like, okay, so you know how like there's like grass and it's like everywhere, but like what anyway, lawns suck was the whole point of the thing. You can't remember any of the actual details of it, even though you were totally following along with the entire thing. It's called the illusion of competence. Very like standard part of psychology. You really need to wrestle with something yourself to retain basically anything. And here's why. A little bit of light neuroscience, even though I got this fucking part of it wrong. Come on, back up here. It's not your hippocampus. It is your thalamus. So you take in all this sensory input all the time. So like I'm standing in front of a window right now. All right, well there's a house across the street, it's blue. There's like kind of a grid pattern on the side of the thing. It has one very small window on the side of the house. I see about 7 cars. One of them's red, 3 of them are black, one of them's white. One of them kind of looks like O.J. Simpson's Bronco. Like, you're constantly taking in all of this sensory information. And what your thalamus's job is figuring out, is this relevant? And if it's not relevant, like I've already forgotten like what the side of my neighbor's house looks like because I'm not actively looking at it. It's not relevant. So your brain gets rid of it. Who cares? You go, ooh, wait a minute. This is kind of like, I see that grid pattern a few different times, and I think it has this name, and I've also seen it used in this other circumstance. All right, that's relevant. So we encode it. So you need to make something relevant. The way that college tries to hack around this is it's going to be on the test. It's like, if you had someone who's like, well, is this going to be on the test? Like, no, we're just learning for learning's sake. And if you immediately stop listening, that's sort of the pitfall of like that relevancy game. Luckily, we're here trying to get some fucking jobs. And so I feel very confident that every single one of these standards represents something that will help you get employed. So all of this stuff should be very damn relevant to all of you. And so tack on to that. But like at the next level down, we're trying to make each new piece of information you get relevant because you struggled with something. I was trying to go through this problem and I got stuck. And then I learned this thing that would have gotten me unstuck. That's the magic to get you past your relevancy filter. Pro tip, for those of you who are like, yes, brains. Your sensory input also goes to a thing called hypothalamus. Come on. And your hypothalamus's job is to figure out, is this going to kill me? And if the answer is yes, then it, like, if you ever watch Star Trek and they're like, all power to thrusters, they're taking power out of some things and putting it into something else. Well, your brain works the same way. If it thinks you're in trouble, a variety of things happen, including like your fingernails stop growing. When you're like in fight or flight mode, like what point is there in like growing fingernails? So like, nope, all that gets redirected. You're no longer hungry anymore. There's all sorts of things like that. And the reason I'm bringing this up is one of those things that stops happening is you lose the ability to learn. What is there to learn? Get away from the fucking lion, man. But these are really simple, like, I mean, they're powerful, but they're simple structures. Your hypothalamus doesn't distinguish between like physical danger, like I'm running from a tiger, and psychological danger, like I feel like I'm losing my sense of identity or somebody hurt my feelings or something like that. You also can't learn under those circumstances. So that's a very important thing to be aware of with yourself as far as like emotional regulation and those kinds of things. Because when you flood, your body's trying to take care of you. And one of the ways that it does that, it stops you from learning things. Good thing to know. And let's see, was there anything else? Yeah. Who's heard of learning styles? I see Jen has. I see Jay has. Oh, I see a whole bunch of people. There we go. Learning styles. So learning styles came out of research. This is around like 1990 or so. I had a hypothesis that different people would naturally acquire information more effectively if that information was taught to them in their dominant learning style. And he hypothesized that we had these 4 different styles of learning. And so we should target instruction to like each of these 4 different styles. And like, it was so this research came out and like, you know, the initial results were kind of heartening. for whatever reason, the media ran with this one, man. And like, it became part of people's identities. Like, I'm a visual learner. The bad news is that all the like cognitive psychologists went, wait, what? Dominant learning style. As I mentioned, these things are fairly simple. There's not a visual learner thalamus and a auditory learner thalamus. So it kind of didn't pass the smell test. And so then about 1 million people tried to replicate the results of that study, and no one was able to do it because these are bullshit. It's just not a thing. Now, one of the reasons that like this has been allowed to persist as long as it has is that the big recommendation from Learning Styles was that, well, you should do multimodal instruction. Cool. Well, you should still do multimodal instruction because all of these different modes, like experiencing the same content in a bunch of different modes does help you retain it better. But that's true of everybody. Now, one of the curious things about this is there's a very slight negative correlation to retention with people's learning preferences. You probably have, I like books or print books or articles or videos or games. You probably do have some kind of preference for those sorts of things, and that's real. The problem is it has a negative correlation with your retention because comfort zone, baby. Like staying where you're comfortable. Don't like being challenged. Some other mode is like challenging you right now, so you push back against it. That's not something to overthink. This is mostly just, I don't want to hear anybody say I'm a visual learner for the next 15 weeks, please. After you leave the school, you can go back saying whatever the fuck you want. But I'm telling you, this is not a real thing. And hopefully it doesn't make a difference because we're getting you some action with all these different modes anyway. Cool. Man, we covered an awful lot of ground with education stuff. Ask me some questions.
I was actually wondering, will the lessons be available for us after the program if we don't have time to like learn everything we want out of them within the time frame?
So my personal attitude on this is that I'm not in the business of not teaching people. You don't have to log in to use that Firebase site. You can send it to your friends if you want. All my YouTube videos are all publicly listed anyway. That said, I think you have a specific like legal like thing that you have with Flatiron as far as like how learning materials are made available. And I think it's pretty generous. I mean, check your student contracts, but my hunch tells me that you retain access to materials that you used indefinitely. Okay. My opinion and the opinion of everybody in Denver right now is that like, fuck it, man. Like, take it, use it, please. And also like keep coming to lessons and stuff after you graduate. I love seeing people come back. You can also come to stand-ups and stand-downs. Like it's a, you know, Brian's probably told you we call it the love bubble. And like anytime you want back in, just come on back. Now, like I don't speak on behalf of Flatiron, so I would refer to your contract for more specific things, but that is the general disposition of the staff here.
Okay. That's good.
I don't get paid any more or less if like you come back as a graduate. I just like teaching you guys.
I'm just used to not to like keep going back to the college thing because like I never agree with college dropout, didn't work. But like I had a college friend send me a scholarly like an article that they wrote or someone wrote in their college, and they got in trouble and had to like don't say anything about that because yeah, no, for real. And I was like little dumb high school. I'm like, what are you talking about? That doesn't make sense. And like he was like, yeah, no, you can't. It's college property or something.
Yeah, that can eat my shit, man. So like, here's like a dirty secret about education, and this is especially true in boot camp land, but it's also true in college for sure. Is that people get very precious about content. because they think that content is the important part. And like startup people in particular are vulnerable to this because content scales really easily. I do one cool lecture and then I can charge people for it indefinitely. And so it's very attractive to imagine that this is the important part of education. But as I mentioned, I don't care what content you use to be able to do these, because frankly, it doesn't matter that much. It's probably going to be some mishmash of a whole bunch of different things. And assessments are super valuable. A really well-written and well-administered assessment, that's worth gold, man. And then like, but also a killer assessment really can't be auto-scored. You need a human, an expert human, to like look at it and review it and compare it to a rubric. And like, so that's really expensive and difficult to do, so nobody does it. But like, that's the fucking valuable part. And if you can get a really tight feedback loop between an assessment being taken and assessment feedback being given, this is like education magic there. But college doesn't do that. College gives you 3 tests per class. You're lucky if you get anything more than just your score, much less like any feedback. And it's usually 3 weeks later when you've moved on to some other material anyway. Like, that shit's useless. But content, my precious content, my copyrighted content. But like, honestly, it just doesn't matter. It's not that valuable on its own. Other questions about education stuff?
Are those assessments that are on the Firebase app page, are those the ones that we need to pass to go move on to the next module, or are those just kind of like self-assessment tools?
Self-assessment tools. They can also be really good starts for conversations. So you could say, hey, here is I did this one for the enumerables assessment. Can somebody like take a look at this and see if I'm on the right track? That is such an awesome proactive way to have a great conversation with an instructor. But nobody is required to turn those in. We don't track them or anything like that. The ones that like you have to do to graduate are called code challenges. And you do those the second week of every mod. They take like an hour to do. They're way bigger than the ones on the Firebase site.
Okay, thanks.
And I think Brian told you, but we give you a whole bunch of reps on those too. So like it's also not like a college assessment where it's really an autopsy. It's like, all right, I'm done teaching. Did it work? And if the answers come back no, you go, well, better luck next time. It's like the worst way to teach. So we try to use the assessments as part of the learning process. So you guys will get your first code challenge next Tuesday. And if you don't pass it, and I don't expect that like many, if any of you will, you go, cool. Well, you probably got some parts of it. And which parts did you get and which parts did you not get? Then it gives us the opportunity to make the next 4 days of our lives so much more productive, because we can get really tight feedback loops on whether or not you're understanding something. So in general, that's how we use assessment. Other questions about ed stuff?
So I understand that we have to be capable of working on our own, and I do like that idea, but I'm still not 100% sure about the deadlines or that we have to be aware of or
Gotcha.
lectures per se. You said that we could access lectures whenever we want, but
Correct.
Is there going to be like a structured schedule where we'll have lectures and then exercises or something?
Nope. That is very loosey-goosey. And that usually makes people very anxious in the first week, sometimes 2 weeks. By the second mod, you won't be able to do any other kind of education program for the rest of your life. There are some deadlines. So for example, If you don't pass the code challenge by the end of next Friday, you get another shake at it the following week. If you don't pass it by the end of that week, then you have to repeat that mod. And since we're on an every 6 weeks thing, you're repeating that 6 weeks again. And then you have projects on every third week, and those are, you have to present those end of the day on Friday of that week. And then you have 2 hackathons. That's a 1 day. You got to put together a project and present at the end of the day. You have capstones. You have 2.5 weeks to work on them, and then you present them. Oh, and blog posts. You have blog posts that are due at the end of every mod. That is all of the deadlines for this program. Everything else is just designed to help you do well at those, and like more broadly, prepare you well for your career. It'll take some getting used to, but it works, and it's very empowering.
I imagine there's more info on the blog post to come in terms of like where we're going to be posting those and how and expectations of them. Okay.
Correct. Although the requirements for those are a lot like the project requirements. I'll tell you right now, your blog posts should be blog post length. They should be blog post tone. They should be posted somewhere that people read blog posts. You know, like a blog. You've read one before. Do one like that. Preferably one of the good ones. That's honestly kind of it. I would recommend that you do some of them about technical topics, and I recommend that you do some of them about non-technical topics. Like, I did pair programming for the first time, and here was my experience, and here's some advice that I have. Killer blog post right there. I recently learned this cool trick in Node.js, and here it is. Terrific blog post. Past that, I don't super care, and neither does anybody else. Like, if you like would like a recommendation, a lot of people post their stuff on Medium, but there's also Dev.to, or you can put it on a personal blog, or you can put it wherever. Super doesn't matter. Projects, you should make a web app. Other than we'll give you a little bit more guidance on your first project, but everyone after that, including your capstone, is make a web app. Do your best. That's it. And that's another one that like feels like you have too much freedom and too much choice the first time you do it, and then you'll never be able to work any other way again for the rest of your career. And yeah, we will have like a little bit, we'll have some examples that you can look at if you want. You can talk to the older students about it. But it's not something worth getting worked up on. Jesse Pope has a really good guideline, which is spend half an hour drafting it, spend half an hour editing it, and then post it and move on with your life. I'd say it's a pretty good strategy overall for blog posts. Other questions about ed stuff? Cool, just like before, I don't want you to have the illusion of confidence. Although one quick thing, the specifics of all of this stuff, I don't care that much about. I don't remember that you remember that this is called a thalamus, for example. One of the things that distinguishes what we're doing right now from a lecture is there's a particular way that I want you to feel at the end of the day here. And that, it targets a different brain mode called your rich brain mode. And so like the specific facts and figures of like a lot of this shit doesn't matter nearly as much as how you feel about it. And that's something that speaking to a large audience is actually fairly effective at. in case that like that particular incongruency came up in your head. But just like before, I do want you to wrestle with that feeling a little bit and maybe get some of these facts in. So let's spend 5 minutes writing down some takeaways from all the stuff that we did here. 5 minutes, starting right meow. Go.
Hey, Kyle.
Yep.
I got another quick question. When it comes to our project, like, I don't know how the best way to ask this is, but how much do we need to consider, or should we consider about like the general usefulness of our app, or how it would look in terms of like a portfolio towards an employer? Should we mostly just focus on making apps that teach us the tools that we want to learn, need to learn?
Like, I wouldn't overthink it. Here's a boundary though. Every once in a while I'll have a student who wants to do the same project like 4 times in a row. Don't do that. That's always the wrong call. Like, no, but like I develop it a little bit more like each time. Like, don't do that. Like a mix of those is probably fine. If you want to do something just because, like, I don't know, there's some technology that works particularly well for that kind of problem, I think that's reasonable. If you want to have something that's even like laser targeted at impressing a specific employer, like, I don't know, it's probably a handy thing to have in your portfolio. But one of the reasons that like you really don't need to overthink the projects that much is that like you're going to end up having 6 or 7 projects by the end of this program. First of all, don't put 6 or 7 projects on your resume. That's too many. This would really be like 2 or 3. Now, it can be nice to have a selection. So like you don't necessarily send out the same resume to every job you apply for. So you can sort of pick and choose a little bit. That can be nice. But also, it's 6 or 7 projects. Mod 6 is awfully long, and you could do another capstone the day after capstones, and it'll be better than every other project you did in the program. You don't have to do that, but you have the freedom to. So it's probably not worth overthinking the project thing too hard. All right, cool. So what I'd like you to do now is I'd like you to send me what you wrote. I'm really curious. So Slack that over to me. If you didn't write it digitally, like you can just take a camera shot of it or something like that. Slack that over to me, and then I'll see you back at 4:20. Cheers. Oops. All right. Very nice, very nice. If you haven't Slacked me something, please do so. Ah, these are great. Good. Excellent takeaways all. All right, let's get into the last part of this. Well, penultimate part of this. Yes.
You said the Slack you do, we just do that where we put our questions from earlier, or do we have to PM you?
PM me.
Okay.
Cool. Let's get into the last part of the chart, and then we'll do a little activity. Personal growth and interactions. So a couple things we want to get straight on. So the routines and rituals that we do here, this is all part of the job. Some of them might seem a little silly, like the summer campy stuff that we were doing this morning, or clapping, or some of the stuff we do in project presentations. That stuff all serves a purpose. So if that's not immediately clear to you, like, take my word for it for right now. But all of that stuff is like critical part of the program. Your time management chops are going to be put through a workout in this program. So that's another one of like the major takeaways that you'll probably have is how much you can get done in a certain amount of time. You're not going to be able to do all of it, so you're going to have to pretty aggressively prioritize. That's also part of the outcomes of the program. So meetups. Denver has the best meetup scene, I think, in the world. It's better in San Francisco. It's better in New York's. It's better than everywhere's tech scene, or meetup scene in particular. And there's a lot of reasons why I think that's the case, but it's no different in these times of pandemic of ours. I think, Christine, you're the new keeper of the keys for meetups, correct? I don't know if Christine's still here. We'll try to post links to these. Almost all of them are on meetup.com. Also, if you want to make an account there and kind of poke around, there's probably a meetup every day of the week. And some of them are about specific technologies like JavaScript or Ruby. Some of them are about like more soft skills-y kinds of stuff. My favorite one, the one that I haven't missed one of these in 5 years, is the Develop Happy Hour. So that one is the second Tuesday of every month, and it's no speaker, no like agenda. We just do like it's kind of like speed dating but with groups. So you get put in a group of 3 or 4 people. You talk for like 7 minutes. I think we've been doing it, and then you just get reshuffled into another group. And one of the things that I think intimidates people the most about these is like, but I'm a student, I'm going to be caught because I don't know anything. Don't underestimate how social these fundamentally are. Like, especially that happy hour one. Like, it's my favorite meetup. And sometimes we talk about tech, but sometimes we talk about the Broncos, and sometimes we talk about like mechanical keyboards, and sometimes we talk about video games, and sometimes we talk about I was in one group where we just talked about 50 sci-fi authors for 10 minutes because that happened to be the thing that all of us had in common, is that we all like classic sci-fi. And so like networking is a really pretentious way of saying make friends. That's all it is. Just go make friends. And some of my closest friends in this industry, I have never written a line of code with. I just like bullshitting around with them. And that's an awfully fine way to like friend yourself into a job also. But you don't have to go up and you're like, hey, anybody know anybody who's hiring junior developers? Just like, you're interesting. You have things that you like that are cool. Just share those with other people. Listen to the things that they think are cool. Like, find common ground. That's all this really is. And with the more technical meetups, one of the things that is common with those is you'll go to some technical talk and you go, wow, I didn't understand a single word that they said. And you'll go to that meetup next time. Then you'll go to it the time after that. And all of a sudden, slowly, bit by bit, you'll go, God, I kind of understood a lot of that. Because they talk about really similar things at these meetups. They're really sort of capturing some like tech zeitgeist in a lot of this. And you need to get your ears used to hearing these words. But I remember 5 years ago, I had a student who had, second week of the program, had gone to Denver Script, which is one of my favorite meetups also. And I didn't understand a single word they said. And then about 6 months later, one of his friends was giving a presentation at Denver Script and goes, man, why is John talking about like such beginner stuff? And he realized it was actually the same topic as that one he'd went to in his like first or second week. It was just basic to him now, 6 months later. So they're a lot more fun if you do them in groups. So invite other people, team up, makes them way more accessible and like less intimidating if you got some buddies. Cool. This is less of an issue remotely, but it's not an issue. Flatiron used to have free beer, and like most meetups generally do have free beer. And so what I would tell people is like, beware the free beer. You don't want like a reputation for being the drunk asshole. It's like a very open, forgiving community, but you don't want people to have stories about you. It doesn't do your peers any favors either. So when you're at these kinds of events, just like have a good time, cut loose by all means, but don't be a story. That also applies remotely, especially at the happy hour. Like I said, get loose, be comfortable, make friends, but always make sure that you're still in control. Maturity and inclusivity. So the idea with this, when we're talking about maturity, what we're not talking about is something that, like, I generally hear this called like being professional. I've only ever heard somebody tell someone to be professional when they're trying to get away with doing something unethical. So like, I euthanized everybody's pets, but hey, slow down, let's be professional. They're always trying to get away with something. So like, that's not really what we're talking about with maturity. And obviously, like, I'm a shit fuck, swear guy. You don't have to be, but what is really important is that you're your authentic self. Whatever, I had a boss from New Jersey once, and it just kind of rubbed off on me, and I say a lot of F's and S's. We don't really do bad words at Flatiron, but we do, you don't have to use a swear word to marginalize somebody or make somebody feel uncomfortable or not welcome or do something hurtful. So that's really kind of what we're talking about with this. We want you to be who you authentically are, but the inclusivity part of it is, I don't want you to just be okay with other people being who they authentically are. I want you to actively welcome them in. And so in person, what this means is, like, if you're gonna go out to lunch, like, actively look for somebody that like doesn't really look like they got something going on for lunch, or that you haven't had lunch with before, and invite them out with you. This same thing would go for meetups. This applies to project groups. You don't want somebody to feel like their presence is tolerated. You want somebody to feel like they're being actively included. That's how the love bubble works. That's the secret sauce, is being who you authentically are and making other people feel like they're being rewarded for being who they authentically are. And so if who you are is like kind of closed, that's completely fine. But I don't want anybody to feel like they have to pretend to be that way if they're not. And if you are like a big, loud personality, I want you to feel like you can be that also. But we're still trying to make a welcoming environment where everybody feels like this is a home for them. So like two things that that I'll also want to throw on here is that if you're a dude, here's something you want to be real fucking careful about. You want to be as you're like actively including people and networking and making friends and doing all these things that I'm asking you to do, be very careful with how splainy you're getting. But there's another side to this, and this is the only context that I'll say this kind of thing in. If you identify as a woman, I would ask you to like knock down your filter for that just a little bit, because since this is an educational environment, part of somebody learning something might be trying to teach you something. And it's not necessarily an assumption that you don't know it. It might be them trying to process this out loud or trying to better understand something themselves by teaching it. That's a completely legit way to learn something. So guys, I'm asking you to be very careful about when you're doing something like that. And if you do want to like, just see if you can teach your way through something, be just real upfront with your intentions on that. And if you identify as a woman, then like, I would ask that like, you do one level lower on your filters for that than you would out in the wild. So like, I'll let the community kind of handle the rest of that. And we do like actively monitor communication. And I think Brian's talked about a lot of those kinds of things. But from like the squishy side of this, this is my request of everybody here, is to be super sensitive on one side and also on the other side. Ask yourself if maybe they're trying to learn something by teaching it or talking through it out loud. A couple more things. So if you ask an employer what they find valuable in an employee, it's probably not, well, they're a super duper good programmer. And it's because your soft skills matter a lot more than your technical skills. That is just the hard truth of it. This is your interpersonal communication chops. This is your project management skills, your ability to learn new things. Something we sort of broadly call thinking like a developer, like problem decomposition. These are soft skills. And so the reason I bring this up is some people come to programs like this and they go, yeah, just like, I don't care about the squishy stuff. I don't care about the games. I don't care about the clapping. I just came here to get really good at JavaScript. Okay, well, if like that's your goal, I can save you $15,000 right now. Get Kyle Simpson's You Don't Know JS series. It's free online. Like, go through all 6 of those books. They're real short. They're like 70 pages long. And you'll be carved out of wood as a JavaScript developer at the end of that. You will not be any more employable than you are right now. But if all you want to do is learn how to program, there are way cheaper ways to do it than that. The soft skills, a lot of this stuff ends up being a little bit wax on, wax off. So what I would ask you to do is drink the Kool-Aid. All the like kind of sillier things that we do here, they're for a purpose. And specifically, I want you to invest in each other's success. This is definitely not a reality show. I didn't come here to make friends. Yes, you did. You need these friends. This is your first professional network. It's a very difficult program, and you're going to need each other's help to get through it. And as far as being vulnerable, you are not going to be able to maintain whatever facade that you came in trying to do today for very long. The program is just too stressful. And so what inevitably happens is everybody finds out exactly how like weird and kind of broken everybody else is before too long. So in the spirit of Kool-Aid drinking, we can get a lot more work done a lot more quickly if you just kind of like let down the guards on this right away. If you can't do it day 2, then do it day 3, do it day 4. But the longer you hold out on that, the less work we can effectively get done. And like, it makes sense. You come to summer camp and you go like, I want people to think of me this way. So I'm going to make sure that I'm kind of perceived this way. That's the thing I'm asking you to let go of. Now, there's another side to this that I want to be careful about. So as far as being vulnerable, appropriate forms of this are, man, I don't know how to do this problem at all. I don't even know where to get started. I don't know how to write a map. I don't really get what a variable is because it seems like I don't change them. So how are they variable? These are things you can be vulnerable about. Other things you can be vulnerable about, I'm really nervous about my career change. Like I was successful in my last career. I don't know if I'm going to be successful in this one. That's a perfectly appropriate thing to be vulnerable about. There's like a boundary that you cross when it becomes things like, all right, everybody dump out their like personal and emotional damage and we'll sort through it together. It's not therapy. And so we want to be careful about the category of vulnerability that we share. Some of this is going to happen naturally, but that's not the vulnerability I'm asking you to do like tomorrow. It's like, all right, who's been hurt? Like I said, I would not be surprised if you do end up having some of those conversations with some of your cohort mates by the end of the program. It's a really intimate program and you're going to get very close to these people. But that's not the thing you need to do day two. And I'd like you to get comfortable using each other for help rather than like running right to like the teacher every time or like just trying to power through something for 4 hours yourself. Admit that you don't know something, ask for help. Maybe nobody gets it. Maybe you can all figure it out together. And like the answers might come from pretty unlikely sources. So that goes back to how inclusive have you been? How welcome do people feel in helping you or like wanting to volunteer help? And so that's all part of this like love bubble kind of thing. Events. So these obviously look a little bit different online, but they're still a thing. So these used to be things like camping trips or video game nights. Some of those turned into like just regular Denver meetups. Remotely, these have been things like we've done a tavern hour before. We haven't gotten a good rhythm with it yet, but people just hanging out in the Zoom room and drinking beer after class. We've also had, let's see what else. We've done several like movie nights where like everybody's just watching the same movie and hanging out in the Zoom room and talking about it while they're watching it. But like if there's anything like that, they're not self-organizing. So like I'd encourage you to like come up with some cool ideas, put them together, and invite people to them. It makes the program a lot more fun if you do that. But something that I've learned in 33 cohorts is that like all I can do is ask you to drink the Kool-Aid. Like it's not forced fun. I can't make you have a good time in this program. But if you'll take my word for this and trust me that the program is a lot easier and a lot more fun if you do these things, it's your culture. Like for better or worse, if this culture ends up sucking, that's kind of on you. I don't lose any sleep over like my part of that. But and like right now in particular, oh my God, we have 2 dream cohorts you guys are coming in on. Mod 3 and the Mod 5 cohort right now are probably like the 2 most open, welcoming, fun fucking cohorts that we've had at the same time in the program before. All you have to do is keep that going. There's like nothing you're fighting against right now. Just don't turn up your nose at it. And I think everybody's going to be just fine. Eat, sleep, move. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I guess it's something. It's kind of a question and kind of also just something to leapfrog off of what you said. Before class started, Sydney and I kind of got together and had like a meetup with people. We were only able to get a few people in, but we do have like a Discord that I set up for. Some people are already in it, but anybody who wants to come in, like, you know, play games, hang out, post coding stuff, so I imagine you probably want to keep that in the Slack channel so you guys can monitor it. I guess that's kind of the question. side
Like
of
that kind of stuff. I mean, we're not the police. The conversations that you have in the Slack channels, like obviously we can do a lot more to, help ensure a safe environment there. But there's no rules about that. Like you guys can absolutely, I think the Discord channel is awesome.
Okay,
you
I'm going
do-
to post that for people to.
Cool. And like the stuff in your student agreement does apply to stuff that like doesn't happen directly in school events. So code of conduct, all that stuff still applies with that kind of stuff. And we can like kick you out of school for something awful you did in that Discord channel. But so like watch yourself, please. But past that, like that sounds like a really cool thing. And thank you so much for setting up, PJ. Cool. Let's see, so that's events, and I think that brings us to the last one. This is also something that is not as much of a problem remotely, but I'm not going to say it's not a problem. So do not date each other. Don't 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 date each other. You have so much other shit you need to do over the next 15 weeks. And like the amount of damage you can do to the social fabric of the program, like don't do it. Don't fucking do it. Don't fucking do it. Do not date each other. Don't do it. The idea will like not even make any fucking sense to you. After like 8 weeks with these people, you get like brother sister close with like your cohorts. Like the idea of dating someone will not make any sense. And you can fuck everything up. Do not do it. Do not do it. Do not do it. If you want to propose to somebody at graduation, that's your business. But while you're in this program, like off the table, don't even consider it. Clear? Nice. All right. So that is our last set of stuff. What questions do you have?
I have one question.
Yeah.
So it says that in the Flatiron webpage, it says that schools are scheduled to reopen September 7th. Do you think that would be the case?
I think that is the official word. I will eat my hat if that happens. I would give fairly low odds on coming back to campus this year. That's off the record, but that's my take.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
The
situation,
yeah, like officially, I think in part for regulatory purposes, they have to like kick the can down the road. We set the time back 6 times now, I think. I would use like the universities as a guideline. Like a lot of them aren't going back. None of the other code schools are. Turing's remote through the end of the year. I would use that stuff as a guideline more than like the official Flatiron statement.
Okay. Yeah, well, my school is going back.
Oh,
So,
really? Interesting.
Yeah. They start August 14th, so that was why I was asking. But it doesn't make any sense either because they're making students wear masks during classes. They have to be like 6 feet apart in classes, and they have to take temperature tests every other day. And I don't know how they're gonna do it, to be honest.
Like that's kind of the thing. For the in-person version of this program to work, you spend so much time as an instructor, like cheek to cheek with somebody looking at their screen. Like I don't see how it's going to work until there's a higher level of confidence than we have right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's not even room for everybody to be 6 feet apart on like anywhere on campus. Yeah, like I said, I'd give it very low odds of your cohort being back in person. I might be wrong. I don't know something that you don't know, but that is my hunch.
It's not like we'll be like escorted off the property if we go there after we graduate, right? Like obviously.
No one at Flatiron gives a shit and like never has.
Okay.
Like I think sometimes they've worked out like extending WeWork membership for like a few months after you graduate. Like that was a thing that Galvanize used to do that Josh and I thought was awesome. But your other option is just to not walk by the front desk at WeWork and walk directly into Flatiron. And I don't think anybody's gonna say shit. We just like having you there.
So when you say use each other for help,
Mhm.
say like in a couple of weeks, one of us is stuck on a code,
Yeah.
and we ask other students to review our code and give us like notes and like, here, you gotta do this. This is in the wrong place. You forgot a comma here. We can all do that. Okay.
Absolutely. Like I encourage you to do that.
All right.
There's a lot of stuff that like would be considered cheating, I think, at a lot of other schools that's not cheating here. Cheating here is pretending you know something that you don't know. That's cheating. But like, since we actually care about your outcomes and like your diploma doesn't actually mean all that much here, there's nothing to like jealously guard about like, so I don't know, I've been enamored of this book lately that talks about like, all right, well, if really the only thing you're cheating is yourself by cheating, then like, how come colleges police it so hard? And it's because like, even a cheater abhors a diploma mill. If they cheated away through school and then they got a worthless sheet of paper, it doesn't benefit anybody. So you have to protect the signal. We do a lot less of that here. Like all of our stuff is open book. All we're trying to do is figure out what you know. And if you manage to like sneak one past us, because we really don't check that hard, and like, cool, way to trick me into not giving you the education you paid 15 fucking grand for. You really are only cheating yourself. And like, that's kind of how we feel about that. So, and yeah, for like, I'm confused about this. Can another student review my code and help me out? Like, that's the benefit of having like cohorts in like a program like this.
All right.
Because, and here's the neatest part about this. You can want to help Neil out completely selfishly. You like, if there's some concept that you get, you only know what you had to overcome to understand that. There's all kinds of things that you take for granted when you know something, when you learn something. When you take it from a teacher, you really want to learn something, try solving somebody else's problem, because then you'll go, I would have never done that. I don't know why that's happening that way because I've never done it that way before. Maybe I don't understand this. And so you can learn a shit ton by helping somebody else out. So even if you were, oh, I'm not here to make friends, I'm just here to be a good programmer, helping a lot of people out is a great way to get better at programming. What else?
How much of the social interaction has changed the last 2 months with going all online, particularly, I guess, with like meetups and stuff? If it wasn't like in the past, I guess, like one of your strong suits, do you have to put even more of an effort now because it's all online, or has it become maybe easier for someone who would go to less of those in the past, maybe?
Oh, I think it's way easier. Because like, I think some of it is you feel less physically vulnerable. You're in the comfort of your own house. So you get like some amount of security right off the bat. And also like, it's easier to show up. It's easier to leave. You just have to invest so much less in all of those things. Now, the things that are harder with those kinds of interactions are like, there's a little bit of lag. Even with something like Zoom, even like the way we're talking right now, it's a tiny amount of lag, probably under a second. But that's enough that all of the social cues that your brain has like burned in for your entire life are a little bit off. Somebody's silence, somebody's thinking, somebody's all of this stuff takes just a little bit longer, and that takes some getting used to. But it's totally doable. It's just a slight recalibration. So when I ask somebody a question, I just have to mentally go like, all right, it's going to be one more beat before like my 19 years of teacher training kick in. Like they're not going to come up with an answer. So like that's a little bit different, but I'd say every other aspect of it is probably easier. What else? Cool. So I'd like to go into our last activity. It's actually not going to be summarizing this. We're going to do some letter writing. So you're going to write 2 letters. Let me pull up the prompt for this one. So get out something to write with. Again, I don't care if this one is digital or analog. Oops, not Flatiron School. There we go. Nope. Search. And the prompt for this. And here it is. All right. This course will be really hard. There will be lots of struggle. Cherish the times when stuff seems easy because you're going to feel overwhelmed a lot of the time. When stuff is too easy for you, talk to us about it. You can always make your code better, so we'll push you as far as you think you can go. Be prepared to go outside your comfort zone. That's where growth happens. So for this first letter, you're going to write a letter to your friends and family. Explain that you need to spend as much time as possible on this program working to change your life. If they want to support you, the best way that they can do that is by helping you like really go both feet in on this. Maybe that means releasing you for some obligations for a while. Maybe that means helping you get your laundry done or making sure you go to bed at a reasonable time. Your time is at an extreme premium right now. Explain that you might be a bad friend for a while, but you need their help to succeed. So we're going to take a couple minutes. Please write this letter. Letter to your friends and family asking for their support. Go. Another 2 minutes. Cool. Pencils down, real and virtual. Up to you whether or not you send that to them. But good mindset to be in regardless. All right, second letter. Write a letter to yourself. Come back to this letter when you need encouragement. Whatever you think you'll be bad at during this course, mention it. You're bad at getting to bed on time and waking up in the morning, then encourage yourself to take your sleep hygiene seriously. If you're bad at hitting the books when you get home, tell yourself how important it is for you to focus. If you're scared you won't understand and you're doing a bad job, remind yourself that this is hard and you're going to struggle, but you know that you can do it if you spend enough time on it. If you're bad at asking for help, remind yourself that you're a learner and it's acceptable to need support when you're learning. Write down what you will have wanted to do so that your future self can live up to your expectations. A couple minutes, write that letter. Go. Two minutes. right, pencils down. Cool. So we made it to the end of the first day. As I mentioned, your second day looks an awful lot like your 70th. So it's pretty much regular school day tomorrow. We will have a couple things to sort of get you started off, but elsewise, you're going to be picking and choosing lessons right off the bat tomorrow. So last thing that we do for the day is we send out a survey. We send it every single day. Damon, did you already do it? Beat me to the punch? No.
Nope.
All right. So if Flatiron does anything, it's survey the shit out of you, but it's for a good reason. So a lot of the surveys are for different audiences. The one that you're about to get, the one that you do every day, this is just for the instructional staff. We use these to evaluate ourselves, see whether or not we did the job that we thought that we were doing that day. It's an opportunity for you to give us feedback about something you thought was awesome or something you thought was just sucked. And when we do these every day, we notice that nothing really gets sort of pent up, and you have some festering wound of a gripe about something. Gives us a chance to address it right away. Or if you have some cool idea for something we can do the next day, we can do it the next day. We do that all the time. Also, if you don't have that much to say, these take 3 seconds to do. It's a couple required questions and a couple optional questions, and then we move on with our lives. But want everybody to do these every day. Hopefully, we do read every single one of them, everyone on the staff religiously. I even read them on my week off last week. So Ahmed is probably reading them today. But I want you to feel like we read them also. So if you feel like there was something that didn't get addressed that you threw in there, you can DM one of us and we can chat about it a little bit. But that's going out right now. Then you're going to get your final stand down link once I get all those in. And so that'll be just like the one we did this morning. It's kind of the mirror of it. And then we're done for the day. Any questions before we wrap? All right, now the hardest part of the day, I got to think of a song to put in here. I am going to go with shit. I want to do 90s grunge, but I've done so much 90s grunge lately that fuck. Got some Pearl Jam. I don't really like Pearl Jam, so I don't use their shit that much. Here we go. Don't call me survey. No, shit, I did that one already. God damn it. All right, this is taking too long. Whatever. All right, if you look in the announce channel, there's a survey with your name on it waiting to get filled out. Go ahead and do that. And then elsewise, I'll see y'all at stand down in 3 minutes. Bye.